The champagne glass gleams under the crystal chandelier, golden bubbles rising in perfect spirals. Elena's fingers hover just inches away, trembling almost imperceptibly. Her heart slams against her ribs so hard she's certain everyone in the room can hear it. She sees it, that faint, opalescent shimmer swirling through the liquid. Something that shouldn't be there. Something that doesn't belong in champagne. Something deadly. 3 seconds. That's all she has. 3 seconds to decide whether to stay silent and stay safe, or risk everything, her job, her safety, her entire future, for a man she's never met. Would you do it? Would you sacrifice everything for a complete stranger? Her hand moves before her mind can catch up. A subtle shift. A switch so smooth it looks like nothing at all. And then she's walking away, heart pounding, certain that no one noticed. But she's wrong, because across the table, a pair of dark eyes followed her every movement. Marcus Sterling saw everything. And when he reviews the security footage later that night, he'll discover that a waitress he's never spoken to just saved his life. What happens next will change both of them forever. But to understand why Elena made the choice she did that night, we need to go back to the moment her life first fell apart. Elena Reyes was 24 years old when the world as she knew it ended. She was in her final year of nursing school, top of her class, dreaming of working in pediatric care. Every night, she came home to a small apartment she shared with her mother, Rosa, and her younger brother, Miguel. They didn't have much, but they had each other. Rosa worked 2 jobs to help pay Elena's tuition, cleaning offices in the morning, waitressing at a diner in the evenings. She never complained. "You're going to be a nurse," she would say, her eyes bright with pride. "You're going to help people. That's worth everything." Then came the cough. It started small, just a persistent tickle that wouldn't go away. Rosa dismissed it. "Just allergies," she said. "Just a cold." When Elena finally convinced her to see a doctor, he barely looked up from his clipboard. Prescribed some antibiotics. Told her to rest. The cough got worse. Rosa grew thinner. Elena begged her to go back, to get more tests. But Rosa was stubborn and scared, and the doctor had said it was nothing, right? By the time a different doctor finally ordered a scan, the cancer had spread everywhere. Stage 4. Inoperable. 3 months, maybe 6 if they were lucky. They weren't lucky. Elena watched her mother wither away in a hospital bed, failed by the very medical system she had dreamed of joining. Rosa died on a Tuesday morning in April, holding Elena's hand, whispering that she was proud of her. Elena was destroyed. The lawsuit against the negligent doctor went nowhere. He had connections, lawyers, a hospital that closed ranks around him. The legal fees devoured their savings, then their apartment deposit, then Elena's tuition fund. She dropped out 3 months before graduation to work full-time, to keep Miguel in school, to survive. Her dream of becoming a nurse died in that courtroom, right alongside her faith in justice. That was 3 years ago. Now, at 27, Elena works double shifts at Le Magnifique, the most exclusive restaurant in the city. She serves people whose watches cost more than her yearly salary. She smiles when they look through her like she's invisible. She says, "Yes, sir," and "Right away, ma'am," and pretends she doesn't feel the humiliation burning in her chest. Every month, she sends half her paycheck to Miguel for college. Every night, she comes home to a studio apartment with a leaky faucet and a window that doesn't quite close. Every morning, she wakes up and does it all over again. But she hasn't lost herself. Not completely. She still helps Marco, the elderly dishwasher, carry the heavy trays when his back is hurting. She still gives her lunch to the homeless man who sits outside the service entrance. She still reads her old nursing textbooks at night, running her fingers over the pages like they're letters from a lost lover. Elena Reyes has been broken, but she hasn't been destroyed. She just doesn't know yet that everything she's suffered has been preparing her for one single moment. Yes, she walked into Le Magnifique on that fateful evening. Exhausted from a morning shift at her second job, she had no idea that tonight would change everything. She had no idea that every ounce of pain, every sacrifice, every moment of quiet endurance was about to pay off in ways she never could have imagined. miles away from Elena's cramped apartment, in a penthouse overlooking the glittering city skyline. Another person was trapped in a different kind of prison. From the outside, Marcus Sterling had everything a person could want. At 34, he was the CEO of Sterling Industries, a renewable energy empire valued at $12 billion. His face had graced the covers of Fortune, Forbes, and Time. He owned homes in 4 countries, a private jet, a yacht he'd used exactly twice. But Marcus Sterling was utterly, completely alone. His father, the founder of Sterling Industries, had died of a heart attack when Marcus was just 12 years old. His mother, Catherine, had poured everything into raising him, into preparing him to take over the family legacy. She'd succeeded. But 5 years ago, early-onset dementia began stealing her away, piece by piece. Now she lived in a care facility across town, and on most days, she didn't recognize her own son. Marcus visited her every Sunday. Sometimes she would have a lucid moment, would squeeze his hand and call him by name. Those moments were both the best and worst part of his week. Beyond his mother, who did Marcus have? Business associates who wanted his money. Shareholders who wanted his success. Women who wanted his status. He had learned long ago that wealth was a magnet for false affection, and he'd built walls so high around his heart that no one could climb them, in one except Victor Hale. Victor had been Marcus's best friend since they were 14 years old, 2 awkward teenagers in elite boarding school, bonding over their shared status as outsiders among old money families. When Marcus took over Sterling Industries, he made Victor his CFO. They had built the company together, or so Marcus believed. Victor was the brother he'd never had, at least. That's what Marcus thought. Lately, something felt wrong. It started with small things, threatening letters with no return address, a car that nearly ran him down in a parking garage, ruled an accident, a lucrative deal that fell apart due to a leak no one could trace. Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that someone was circling him like a shark scenting blood in the water. But who? And why? Tonight, surrounded by executives at a celebration dinner for the company's biggest deal of the year, Marcus smiled and raised his glass with everyone else. But beneath the polished surface, every instinct screamed danger. He just couldn't see where it was coming from. The champagne was poured. The toast was raised. And across the room, a waitress with tired eyes and gentle hands saw something that made her blood run cold. These 2 worlds were about to collide. The private dining room of Le Magnifique glittered like the inside of a jewelry box. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow fractals across white linen. Tablecloths, the soft clink of silverware and the murmur of expensive cologne filled the air. 8 of the most powerful men in the city sat around a mahogany table that had seen deals worth billions. Elena was assigned to table 7. She'd worked enough of these dinners to know the drill. Be invisible, be efficient, be silent. These men didn't see her as a person. She was a pair of hands delivering food, a smile attached to a champagne tray. Nothing more. She moved through the room with practiced grace, refilling water glasses, clearing appetizer plates. At the head of the table sat Marcus Sterling. She recognized him from magazine covers. Dark hair, sharp jaw, eyes that seemed to see everything and reveal nothing. Beside him sat another man, slightly older, with the kind of smooth charm that never quite reached his eyes. Victor Hale, the CFO. Elena had served him before. He'd never once looked at her face. To Sterling Industries, Victor announced, raising his glass. And to the man who made it all possible. Everyone lifted their champagne. Elena approached with the tray to top off glasses, invisible as always. She reached for Marcus Sterling's glass, and the world stopped. The light from the chandelier caught the liquid at just the wrong angle. There, swirling almost imperceptibly through the golden champagne, was a faint opalescent shimmer. Most people would never have noticed it. Most people hadn't spent 2 years studying pharmacology. Elena's nursing training flooded back in a rush. Certain compounds created that exact visual effect when dissolved in liquid. Arsenic, thallium, things that could stop a heart before dessert was served. Someone had poisoned his drink. Tom seemed to stretch like taffy. The noise of the room faded to a distant hum. Elena's heart pounded so loud she was certain everyone could hear it. "Walk away," whispered a voice in her head. "It's not your problem. You'll lose your job. You'll be accused of what? Causing a scene? Looking crazy? Keep your head down. Survive." But then she saw her mother's face. Rosa, lying in that hospital bed, dying because people who should have helped chose to look away. Doctors who didn't take her seriously. Administrators who protected their own. A whole system of people who saw the wrong thing happening and did nothing. Elena had promised herself she would never be one of those people. Her hand moved. With the grace of someone who had carried trays for 3 years, Elena executed a tiny stumble, so natural, so unremarkable that no one would remember it. In the same motion, she switched Marcus's poisoned champagne with her own glass of untouched water placed with the staff at the service station. The glasses were identical. The movement took less than a second. Perfect. Invisible. She set the tray down and stepped back, heart hammering against her ribs. No one reacted. No one noticed, except, when she looked up, Marcus Sterling was staring directly at her. Their eyes met across the table, hers wide with barely concealed panic, his narrowed with something she couldn't read. Curiosity? Suspicion? The moment stretched for an eternity. Then Victor spoke, breaking the spell. "Marcus?" The toast. Marcus blinked, looked away, raised his glass. "To Sterling Industries," he echoed, and drank. Elena fled to the kitchen, her legs barely steady enough to carry her. Behind her, Victor Hale watched Marcus drain his glass of water. His perfectly composed expression flickered, just for a moment, with confusion. Then irritation. Then something darker. This wasn't supposed to happen. Marcus was supposed to be dead within hours. Someone had interfered. Victor's eyes swept the room, searching for the anomaly, but found nothing. Just servers and executives, and a dinner proceeding exactly as planned. He would have to try again. Meanwhile, Elena stood in the kitchen with her back against the cold metal wall, forcing herself to breathe. She'd done it. She'd saved him. And no one knew. She thought it was over. She thought she'd never see Marcus Sterling again. She thought she could go back to her invisible life and pretend this night had never happened. She was wrong. T2:17 in the morning. Marcus Sterling sat in his home office, unable to sleep. Something about the dinner nagged at him, an itch he couldn't scratch. The way his champagne had tasted slightly off. The strange expression on the waitress's face. Her eyes, terrified but determined, locked with his for that single, electric moment. He pulled up the security footage from the restaurant. Fast-forwarding through the evening, he almost missed it, but something made him stop, rewind, and watch again. In slow motion this time. There, the waitress approaching his table, her hand reaching for his glass. And then, so subtle, so smooth that it looked like nothing, a switch. His glass in her hand, her glass in his place. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. He called his head of security immediately, despite the hour. "I need a glass retrieved from Le Magnifique. The one I was drinking from tonight? No, the one that was switched out. Have it tested. Every toxin you can think of. Tonight." 3 hours later, his phone rang with the results. Arsenic. Enough to cause cardiac arrest within 4 to 6 hours. Untraceable in a standard autopsy. A perfect murder. Someone had tried to poison him in a room full of witnesses. And a waitress he'd never met had saved his life without saying a word. Who was she? Marcus's investigators worked through the night. By morning, they had a name. Elena Reyes, 27, former nursing student, current waitress. They had her address, her work history, her family background. They had the tragedy of her mother's death and the collapse of her dreams. They had a profile of a woman who had every reason to look the other way, and hadn't. Marcus couldn't stop thinking about her. For 2 days, he debated what to do. Then, unable to stand it any longer, he drove to her apartment himself. Elena opened the door on the third knock, clearly expecting someone else. When she saw a billionaire standing in her dingy hallway, she nearly stopped breathing. "You," she whispered. "You saved my life," Marcus said quietly. There was no preamble, no small talk, just truth. "I saw the footage. I had the glass tested. Arsenic. And you switched it without hesitating. I need to know why." Elena's walls went up immediately. I don't know what you're. I have the security video. I have the lab results. Someone tried to murder me, and you stopped it. Why? She was silent for a long moment, fighting some internal battle. When she finally spoke, her voice was raw. Because 3 years ago, I watched my mother die. She died because doctors didn't take her seriously. Because people who could have help chose not to. Because everyone around her decided it was easier to look away than to do the right thing. Her eyes met his, fierce and unashamed. I swore I would never be one of those people. I couldn't let someone else die just because staying quiet was safer. Marcus studied her, this woman in a faded t-shirt and worn jeans, living in an apartment that barely qualified as habitable, who had risked everything for a stranger. Do you know who did it? She asked finally. Who tried to? Not yet. His jaw tightened. But I'm going to find out. Something passed between them in that hallway. An understanding. A connection forged in the strangest possible circumstances. Thank you, Marcus said. Whatever you need, anything, it's yours. Elena shook her head. I didn't do it for a reward. I know. That's exactly why I'm offering. Over the past several months, I've grown increasingly concerned about Marcus's mental state. Erratic decisions, paranoid behavior, unfounded accusations against loyal employees. Victor's voice dripped with false sympathy. I've consulted with psychiatric professionals, and their assessments are troubling. He projected forged psychological evaluations, fake medical reports, fabricated evidence of instability. For the good of the company, I move that we initiate protective measures. A temporary leave of absence for Marcus, with myself assuming operational control until you've stolen everything that isn't nailed down. Every head turned. Marcus stood in the doorway, Elena beside him. Victor's smile flickered. Marcus, this is a private board meeting. I'm the CEO. Nothing about this company is private for me. Marcus walked to the front of the room, calm despite the storm raging inside him. But please continue. I'd love to hear more about my supposed mental instability. Victor's eyes darted between Marcus and the board members, calculating. This is exactly what I mean. The paranoia, the accusations. Let's talk about accusations. Elena stepped forward, phone in hand. Let's talk about the accusations you made in the parking garage 3 nights ago. She pressed play. Victor's voice filled the silent boardroom. People who interfere with things beyond their understanding have a way of having unfortunate accidents. I'd hate for something to happen to you, or to that brother of yours in college. The blood drained from Victor's face. Elena connected her phone to the projector. News slides appeared. Bank statements, wire transfers, the arsenic purchase receipt, the offshore account records. Victor Hale has embezzled $47 million from Sterling Industries over the past 7 years, Elena announced, her voice steady despite her racing heart. He's the source of the leaked business deals, the threatening letters, and the sabotage partnerships. And 3 weeks ago, he attempted to murder Marcus Sterling by poisoning his champagne at the company dinner. Gasps echoed around the room. Board members exchanged horrified glances. She didn't know it yet, but the person who tried to kill Marcus was already planning their next move. And they'd just learned that something had gone wrong. 1 week after the poisoning attempt, Marcus made Elena an offer, a position as his personal assistant, at a salary that made her dizzy. It's not charity, he insisted when she refused. I need someone I can trust. After what happened, I'm running out of those. You don't even know me. You risked your job and your safety to save a stranger's life. I know enough. Elena refused again and again. But when her landlord raised the rent by 40% and Miguel's next tuition payment came due, pride became a luxury she couldn't afford. She took the job. The first week was professional and cold. Elena kept her distance, determined to prove this was just a job, nothing more. She organized his schedule, screened his calls, and pretended not to notice the way his eyes lingered on her when he thought she wasn't looking. But walls don't hold forever. It started with small things. Marcus bringing her coffee without being asked. Elena staying late to help with a crisis, even when her shift was over. Lunch meetings that turned into real conversations. Conversations that revealed the humans beneath the roles they played. Elena learned that Marcus visited his mother every Sunday, even when she didn't recognize him, that he kept a worn copy of his father's favorite book on his desk, that he laughed at terrible jokes when he forgot to be guarded. Marcus learned that Elena still read nursing textbooks at night, that she sent most of her paycheck to her brother, that she hummed while she worked, and that her smile, her real smile, not the practiced one, could light up a room. Neither acknowledged what was growing between them, but everyone noticed, including Victor Hale. Victor had been watching Elena since the night of the dinner. Something about the new assistant set his instincts on edge. She'd appeared out of nowhere. Marcus trusted her implicitly, and the timing was too convenient to ignore. One afternoon, Victor cornered Elena in the parking garage. "So you're the new assistant everyone's talking about," he said, his smile never reaching his eyes. "Marcus seems quite attached to you." Something in his voice made Elena's skin crawl. "He's a good employer, I'm sure." Victor stepped closer. "A word of advice, don't get too comfortable. People who get too close to Marcus tend to find themselves disappointed." He walked away before she could respond. That night, Elena noticed a black sedan parked across from her apartment building. The same car had been there the night before, and the night before that. She told herself it was nothing, just paranoia, but she didn't sleep well anymore. What Elena didn't know was that Victor had already made his decision. The waitress who had somehow ruined his perfect plan needed to be eliminated. And this time, he wouldn't leave anything to chance. Neither of them knew how little time they had left. 3 weeks after Elena joined Sterling Industries, Marcus's private investigator laid a folder on his desk. The contents would shatter everything he thought he knew. "We followed the money," the investigator said. "Every trail leads to the same place." Marcus opened the folder. Bank statements, wire transfers, shell companies, and at the center of it all, a name that made his heart stop. Victor Hale. "That's impossible," Marcus whispered. But the evidence was undeniable. Victor had been siphoning funds from Sterling Industries for 7 years. Nearly $50 million funneled into offshore accounts. The threatening letters, the accidental near miss with the car, the sabotage business deals, all traced back to Victor. And the arsenic purchase? Paid for through one of Victor's shell companies. Marcus sat in silence for a long time. 20 years. He'd known Victor for 20 years. They'd built this company together. Victor was the only person Marcus had ever truly trusted. And Victor had tried to murder him. Why? The word came out broken. The investigator hesitated. "From what we can piece together, jealousy. He's been living in your shadow since you were teenagers. Second place in school, second place in business, second in your father's eyes. He believed he deserved everything you have." Marcus thought of all the times Victor had smiled at him, clapped him on the back, called a brother. All of it was a lie. Every single moment. Elena found him in his office that evening, staring at nothing. She didn't ask questions. She just sat beside him, a quiet presence in his storm. "I was so blind," he said finally. "How did I not see it? Sometimes the people closest to us are the hardest to see clearly." Elena's voice was gentle. "That's not your fault. That's what makes it betrayal." 2 days later, Victor made his move. Elena was walking to her car when Victor materialized from the shadows of the parking garage. His usual polished facade was cracked, something desperate and dangerous lurking beneath. "You've been asking a lot of questions," Victor said, blocking her path. "Making a lot of noise. That's a dangerous habit." Elena's heart hammered, but she forced herself to stand her ground. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do." He stepped closer. "Let me be very clear. People who interfere with things beyond their understanding have a way of having unfortunate accidents. I'd hate for something to happen to you, or to that brother of yours in college." Fear shot through her at the mention of Miguel. But then she thought of her mother, of every person who'd backed down when they should have stood up, of the woman she'd sworn to be. Elena met Victor's eyes without flinching. "Is that a threat, Mr. Hale?" "Consider it friendly advice." He walked away into the darkness. What he didn't see was Elena's hand pressed against her coat pocket. What he didn't hear was the soft chime of a recording ending on her phone. She had what she needed. Now came the hard part. In 3 days, everything would come crashing down, and only one side would walk away standing. The Sterling Industries boardroom had never felt so tense. 20 of the most powerful people in the company sat around the polished conference table, all eyes forward, all sensing that something momentous was about to happen. Victor Hale stood at the head of the room, projector humming, confidence radiating from every pore. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," he began smoothly. "What I'm about to present is difficult, but necessary. It concerns the future leadership of this company." He clicked to the first slide, Marcus Sterling's face alongside medical documents that Marcus had never seen before. "We have the lab results from the poison glass," Marcus added. "Arsenic. Enough to kill. Traced directly to a purchase made through one of Victor's shell companies." Victor's mask cracked completely. His face contorted with rage, all pretense of civility abandoned. "You have no idea what you're talking about," he snarled. "I built this company. I did the real work while you smiled for cameras and took credit. Your father chose you because you were his blood, not because you earned it. I earned it. I deserved to be the one they remembered. I deserved all of it." The confession hung in the air like smoke. Nobody moved. "Every sacrifice I made," Victor continued, his voice rising, "every late night, every deal I closed, every time I saved this company while you played figurehead, and you got everything. The money, the fame, the legacy. It should have been mine. So you tried to kill me," Marcus said quietly. "You don't deserve what you have. You never did." The board chairman stood slowly, face pale. Security. The doors opened. 2 guards entered, moving toward Victor with grim purpose. Victor lunged toward Marcus. Whether to attack or flee, no one would ever know, but the guards caught him, restraining his arms behind his back. "You'll regret this," Victor hissed as they dragged him toward the door. "Both of you. This isn't over." But looking at his former friend's face, twisted with hatred and desperation, Marcus knew that it was. Across the boardroom, his eyes met Elena's. Relief, gratitude, and something deeper, something neither of them was ready to name. It was over. Justice was finally coming. Victor Hale's trial dominated headlines for 3 months. The evidence was overwhelming. Embezzlement, attempted murder, fraud, witness intimidation. His lawyers tried every trick, every delay, every manipulation in the book. None of it worked. On a gray November morning, the jury returned their verdict, guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Victor to 25 years to life in federal prison. He would be 80 years old before he was eligible for parole. As Victor was led from the courtroom in handcuffs, he refused to look at Marcus, sitting in the gallery. The man who had once called himself a brother was now just another convicted criminal. For Marcus, the victory felt hollow at first. 20 years of friendship, revealed as nothing but lies. The betrayal would take time to heal. But healing did come, slowly, and from unexpected places. Elena watched the verdict on her phone, standing in the living room of her new apartment. It had 2 bedrooms, central heating, and windows that actually closed. Marcus had paid off her debts without asking permission, ignoring her protests with the simple statement, "You saved my life. Let me save yours." She had resisted accepting more. But when Marcus offered to fund a nursing scholarship in her mother's name and insisted that Elena be its first recipient, she finally broke down in tears. She was going back to school. Her dream wasn't dead after all. The greatest gift, though, came 3 months after the trial. Marcus's investigators, now freed from the Victor crisis, had turned their attention to Elena's past. They reopened the case of Rosa Reyes's death, uncovering evidence of negligence that the original lawyers had missed. The doctor who had dismissed Rosa's symptoms, whose carelessness had cost her months of treatment time, was finally held accountable. Medical board review. License permanently revoked. Public disgrace. Civil settlement for the family. It wasn't everything. Nothing would bring Rosa back. But it was something. On a quiet Sunday morning, Elena stood at her mother's grave for the first time in months. She laid fresh flowers against the headstone and knelt on the cold grass. "I did it, Mama," she whispered. "I didn't look away. And someone finally heard you." The wind stirred the leaves overhead. Somewhere, a bird sang. And for the first time in 3 years, Elena felt something like peace settle into her bones. Everything she had lost was slowly returning. Not the same as before, but transformed. Better. Earned through suffering and redeemed through courage. Marcus visited his mother that same Sunday. It was one of her lucid days, rare and precious. She held his hand and looked at him with clear eyes. "There's someone new," Catherine said softly. "I can see in your face." "Who is she?" Marcus smiled. "Someone extraordinary, Mom. Someone who saved me. Bring her to meet me. Before I forget again." "I will," he promised. "I will." There was still one question unanswered, and Marcus was finally ready to ask it. 6 months later, Elena Reyes walked through the front doors of Le Magnifique. Not through the service entrance, where she had entered 1,000 times before. Through the front like a guest, like someone who belonged. She wore a simple navy dress that Marcus had insisted on buying her, despite her protests. Her hair was down, softer than the tight ponytail she'd always worn for work. And when she walked with her head high, not the careful invisibility of a servant, but the quiet confidence of a woman who knew her own worth. Marcus was waiting at table 7, the same table where everything had changed. "You know," Elena said as she sat down, "I never thought I'd be on this side of the table." "You were always meant to be here," Marcus replied. "I just had to wait for you to believe it." The champagne arrived, real champagne this time, nothing but bubbles and celebration. The waiter poured with practiced grace, and Elena couldn't help but smile at the symmetry. Then she noticed something at the bottom of her glass. A ring. Simple. Elegant. A single diamond catching the candlelight. She looked up, and Marcus was watching her with that quiet intensity she had come to love. The same expression he'd worn in the parking garage, in the boardroom, in 100 small moments that had somehow become everything. "You saved my life before you even knew me," he said softly. "I've spent months trying to figure out how to repay that, and I finally realized I can't. There's no repaying something like that. But I can offer you this. The rest of my life spent trying to deserve you." Elena's eyes filled with tears. Happy ones for the first time in years. "I don't need you to repay me," she whispered. "I just need you. Then will you marry me?" The answer came without hesitation. "Yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger. Around them, the restaurant erupted in applause. Other diners, staff members, people she didn't know celebrating a love story they'd just witnessed. But Elena barely heard them. She was looking at Marcus, at the man who had seen her when she was invisible. The man who had chased her down not for what she could give him, but for who she was. The waitress who switched a glass in silence had become the woman who owned a billionaire's heart. And she had learned, finally, that true wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in the people willing to save you when you don't even know you need saving. Elena Reyes could have looked away.